A shadow moves over you, blocking out the sun, and the thick smell of rotting meat suddenly hits your nose. You freeze completely, holding your breath, praying that the giant prehistoric bear looming ahead hasn't noticed your brightly colored modern t-shirt. For 99% of human history, this wasn't a nightmare. Your ancestors weren't the brave apex predators of the world. They were just slow, weak snacks. Today, your biggest daily panic is a dropping Wi-Fi signal or a late delivery. But your ancestors lived every single day on the active menu. So what would actually happen if your soft, modern body was dropped right into the middle of the unforgiving Ice Age Pleistocene epoch? You don't have thick fur, you don't have sharp claws, and your flat teeth are only good for chewing soft supermarket bread. Out here on the frozen tundra, you are nothing but a walking, talking, incredibly slow piece of high-calorie protein waiting to be eaten. Biologists call this an evolutionary mismatch. Your brain is trapped in a modern skull, but its deepest survival instincts were forged in this frozen hell. That sudden spike of adrenaline you feel when you hear a loud noise in the dark? That was designed to save you from leaping predators. Fossil evidence confirmed this terrifying reality. In 1981, researcher C.K. Brain examined ancient hominid skulls found in the Swartkrans cave in South Africa. He found two perfectly spaced puncture marks on a skull. They weren't from a weapon. They perfectly matched the bottom fangs of an ancient leopard. The uncomfortable truth is that early humans spent millions of years looking over their shoulders, desperately trying to avoid the jaws of massive beasts. Imagine trying to outrun a monster that weighs over 1,000 pounds, moves in total silence, and can see perfectly in the pitch black. Your modern legs, used to sitting in ergonomic office chairs for 8 hours a day, wouldn't last 10 seconds in a prehistoric death sprint. If you want to understand how you actually survived, you first have to meet the absolute monsters that hunted your ancient grandparents. Let's start with the giant short-faced bear. Standing on its hind legs, this absolute prehistoric unit was over 10 feet tall and weighed 2,000 pounds. Unlike modern bears that might just steal your picnic basket, paleontology shows these prehistoric giants possessed enough bite force to effortlessly crush human skulls. If you try to play dead, it won't work. If you try to run, you will quickly discover that it can sprint significantly faster than a racehorse. Now, maybe you managed to sneak away from the bear. Congratulations! You have just stumbled right into the hunting territory of the legendary saber-tooth cat. Smilodon fatalis wasn't just a big tiger. It was built like a furry tank, with front legs heavily muscled specifically to wrestle giant prey to the ground. Its iconic 7-inch canine teeth were actually fragile. They didn't bite to hold. They pinned you down, aimed for the throat, and quickly sliced the vital arteries. Biomechanical studies of fossilized bones reveal that their neck muscles were incredibly thick, designed to deliver a single, devastating, surgical strike before the prey could even fight back. In modern times, a cat scratch might require a tiny band-aid. Back then, a single swipe from a saber-tooth meant instant game over for your fragile ancestors. But let's say you somehow managed to climb a tree and survive the night. As the sun rises, you face an entirely different kind of absolute nightmare. Enter Pachyrhinocuta, the giant short-faced hyena. These weren't the laughing scavengers you see in modern nature documentaries. They were literally the size of a modern lion. These massive hyenas hunted in highly coordinated packs. If they caught your scent on the wind, simply hiding behind a rock wouldn't save you from their jaws. Fossilized bones from the Zhoukoudian cave site in China perfectly show their terrifying power. These hyenas regularly crushed the thickest bones of prehistoric rhinos to extract marrow. Your modern femur, which currently hurts if you simply bump it against a wooden coffee table, would snap like a dry twig inside their jaws. And here is the most terrifying part. These animals were everywhere. North America, Europe, Asia, Africa. There was no safe zone, no predator-free paradise to escape to. You are standing at the absolute bottom of this prehistoric food chain. So, How did a slow, weak, furless ape manage to not go completely extinct? You probably picture your ancient ancestors as brave, muscular hunters, standing tall with spears and easily taking down massive woolly mammoths. The reality is far more humbling. For a massive chunk of our evolutionary history, early hominids were absolutely not the apex predators. Anthropologists like Lewis Binford studied ancient fossils and proposed a very different reality. We were not noble hunters. We were terrified scavengers. Picture yourself crouching in the tall, dry savanna grass. Your heart pounds as you watch a massive saber-tooth cat finish eating a fresh kill. Your stomach twists with a deep, painful hunger you have never felt before. But you cannot move. You must wait for the monster to leave. The moment the giant cat walks away to sleep, you and your tribe sprint out of the bushes toward the bloody, half-eaten rib cage. You don't have the sharp teeth required to tear the remaining meat off the bone. But you do have something else, a heavy rock. While the terrifying predators ate the soft meat, they often left behind the thickest leg bones. And inside those bones was a prehistoric superfood, bone marrow. It was a rich, calorie-dense fat that was absolutely crucial for powering our rapidly growing, incredibly energy-hungry human brains. We know this is true because archaeologists consistently find ancient animal bones where stone tool cut marks sit directly on top of predator tooth marks. This fossil evidence proves that the predators got there first. Our ancestors were essentially the secondary cleanup crew, sneaking in for the leftover scraps. But even this scavenging job was incredibly dangerous. You had exactly 2 minutes to smash those bones before other hungry scavengers caught the scent. Imagine frantically hitting a giant femur with a rock, constantly looking over your sweating shoulder, terrified that the lion might come back for dessert. Today, you might leave a 1-star review if your hot food delivery is 10 minutes late, or if the grocery store is out of snacks. Meanwhile, your ancient grandparents literally risked being ripped to shreds by giant monsters just to slurp some leftover bone jelly from another animal's garbage. But eventually, hiding in the bushes and waiting for leftover scraps simply wasn't enough calorie intake to feed your increasingly massive, energy-hungry brain. You needed access to fresh, high-quality meat. But how exactly do you get fresh meat when you don't have the biological weapons to hunt? Anthropologists call the next evolutionary leap in human survival power scavenging. And the strategy sounds completely undeniably insane to a modern mind. Picture this. Instead of hiding silently in the tall grass and praying the giant predator doesn't smell you, you do the exact opposite. You and your entire tribe stand up, grab the heaviest rocks and wooden clubs you can find, and sprint directly toward the actively feeding monster. You don't run away. You scream at the top of your lungs and actively bully a 1,000-pound apex predator completely off its own fresh kill. Today, your heart beats fast and your palms sweat when you simply have to ask a waiter to correct a wrong order at a restaurant. Meanwhile, your ancient grandparents literally relied on that same adrenaline spike to steal lunch directly from the bloody jaws of a giant prehistoric cat. So why did this seemingly suicidal tactic actually work? Because apex predators are biologically programmed to avoid any unnecessary injuries at all costs. For a solitary hunting cat, a broken leg means slow starvation. So a screaming mob of aggressive apes throwing rocks becomes a massive, unacceptable risk. And you weren't just throwing light pebbles. Biomechanical studies confirm that the human shoulder evolved specifically for high-speed, highly accurate throwing to defend the group. Your unique shoulder joint acts like an elastic slingshot, storing incredible energy to hurl heavy stones with deadly, bone-crushing accuracy from a safe distance. This cooperative defense strategy, known as mobbing, became humanity's first true superpower. Individually, you were incredibly weak, but together, you were absolutely terrifying. As evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar notes, our brains grew larger primarily to manage complex social bonds, turning isolated weaklings into a highly coordinated army. You didn't survive the brutal prehistoric food chain because you had sharp claws. You survived because you had incredibly brave, crazy, rock-throwing friends standing beside you. As the sun finally sets, your brief moment of prehistoric victory quickly fades. The temperature drops, and a deep, terrifying darkness swallows the landscape. Because while your loud, aggressive tribe might have successfully ruled the daylight, the pitch-black night absolutely belonged to the monsters. Today, when you prepare for sleep, you lock a heavy wooden door, turn on a comforting nightlight, and crawl under a thick, safe blanket. For your ancient ancestors, falling asleep meant lying on the hard dirt, completely exposed to massive predators that could see perfectly in the dark. In that brutal environment, closing your eyes and going unconscious for 8 straight hours was basically a guaranteed prehistoric death sentence. Instead, they practiced segmented sleep. You would sleep for a few hours, wake up naturally in the middle of the night, and then sleep again. This midnight awakening wasn't a frustrating sleep disorder. It was a highly evolved biological security system designed to keep the entire tribe alive. Biologists call this the sentinel hypothesis. By naturally staggering their sleep cycles, there was always someone awake and alert at any given moment. While half the group was in a deep slumber, the others were quietly checking the dark perimeter, listening intently for the snap of a twig. This ancient survival rhythm is exactly why you still randomly wake up at 3 in the morning today, feeling surprisingly alert for no logical reason. You probably angrily stare at your phone screen, diagnosing yourself with severe insomnia and stressing out about your morning alarm. But your brain isn't broken. It's just perfectly executing a very ancient software program designed to check the cave entrance for giant, hungry hyenas. However, even with multiple guards awake, the dark was still overwhelmingly terrifying. Rocks and sticks are completely useless if you can't see your target. To truly conquer the night terrors and survive, your ancestors needed to harness a weapon far more powerful than rocks. You needed to steal the sun. Taming fire was arguably the single greatest turning point in the entire evolutionary history of our incredibly fragile, vulnerable species. It wasn't just about staying warm in the freezing tundra. Fire created an invisible, impenetrable wall of heat and blinding light. No prehistoric monster dared to cross it. Every apex predator on Earth is deeply biologically programmed to fear smoke and open flames. For the first time in millions of years, your ancestors could actually close their eyes, relax, and enter a deep, restorative sleep. He argued that learning to cook our food was the exact biological catalyst that made us truly, unmistakably human. Raw food takes immense jaw strength and hours of chewing to digest. Cooking essentially pre-digests the food outside of your body. This unlocked a massive, immediate surge of easily accessible calories, feeding your highly demanding brain and allowing it to rapidly expand. Because you didn't need to chew tough roots all day, your jaw and teeth physically shrank over thousands of generations to save biological energy. In fact, your modern jaw is now so incredibly small that your wisdom teeth literally do not fit anymore, causing intense pain for millions of people. Today, you pay a dentist thousands of dollars to surgically remove them. But that agonizing pain is a direct evolutionary signature of the very first campfire. Armed with the power of fire, sharp wooden sticks, and a highly cooperative social brain, your ancestors were absolutely no longer helpless, shivering snacks. You literally stepped out of the terrified shadows, actively wielding the terrifying, destructive power of a miniature sun right in the palm of your hand. The tables had permanently turned. The giant bears and saber-tooth cats that once hunted you were suddenly forced to retreat in absolute terror. In a relatively brief blink of evolutionary time, you successfully climbed from the terrified bottom of the food chain to the absolute, undisputed top. So you successfully conquered the food chain. Today, you live in a perfectly climate-controlled box, completely safe from any giant prehistoric predators. But there is a massive invisible problem. Biologists call it an evolutionary mismatch. Your environment has drastically changed, but your biology has not. The deep survival software running inside your modern brain was coded for the brutal Ice Age, and it hasn't had an update since. Think about your intense craving for junk food. For your ancient ancestors, finding a rare beehive full of sugar was an absolute jackpot. Because starvation was a constant threat, your brain rewarded you with massive dopamine spikes to force you to eat every single calorie immediately. Fast forward to today. You are sitting at a comfortable office desk, completely surrounded by cheap, easily accessible donuts and ultra-processed, sugary snacks. Your ancient brain doesn't understand supermarkets. It still violently screams at you to eat everything, genuinely believing that a brutal winter is coming. What was once a brilliant survival mechanism to prevent prehistoric starvation is now the exact same instinct causing a modern global health crisis. This mismatch also perfectly explains your modern anxiety. When a prehistoric bear jumped out, your nervous system instantly flooded your body with adrenaline. Your heart raced, your breathing quickened, and your blood pumped to your muscles, perfectly preparing you to either sprint away or fight back. Today, you experience that exact same intense biological reaction when your boss sends an angry email or when your internet connection suddenly drops. Your body prepares for a physical battle to the death, but you are just sitting absolutely still in an ergonomic office chair. Because you cannot physically fight an email or run away from a stressful mortgage, all that raw survival energy simply gets trapped inside. This trapped adrenaline creates what we now call chronic stress, slowly wearing down your modern body using the very system designed to protect it. You are basically driving a high-performance prehistoric off-road survival vehicle, but you are permanently stuck in slow-moving modern traffic. It is incredibly frustrating. So the next time you feel completely overwhelmed and stressed by modern life, remember that you are absolutely not broken or defective. Your biology is just perfectly tuned and highly optimized for a terrifying prehistoric world that simply no longer exists today. It is the exact same reason why you turn off the basement lights and immediately sprint up the dark stairs in absolute irrational panic. Your highly advanced brain logically knows that you are safe in your house, but your deeply wired nervous system is fiercely screaming to run. For 99% of human history, the dark didn't just hide imaginary monsters under the bed. It hid real, flesh-eating predators waiting for you to stumble. You do not actually have a silly childhood phobia of the dark. You simply have a perfectly preserved, incredibly successful, ancient survival instinct. So when you look in the mirror tomorrow morning, you might just see a tired, soft, modern person who constantly complains about backaches. But deeply encoded directly into your DNA is the incredibly unbroken lineage of the ultimate, most resilient survivors this planet has ever seen. Every single panic attack, every sugar craving, and every sleepless night is simply your ancient ancestors desperately trying to keep you perfectly alive. They fought monsters in the pitch black so that thousands of generations later, you could simply exist comfortably in a perfectly safe world. So, the next time your heart suddenly races for absolutely no logical reason, do not be angry at your incredibly anxious, highly stressed modern body. Instead, take a deep breath, put your hand on your chest, and simply say thank you to the fierce, prehistoric survivor living inside. Because right now, a giant shadow suddenly moves over you, completely blocking out the bright sun, and a thick, incredibly strong smell hits your nose. But you don't freeze in terror. It is only a commercial airplane, and that strong smell is just a nearby modern food truck. Today, you might still complain about a painfully slow Wi-Fi signal, but never forget that your ancestors successfully conquered the deadliest monsters on Earth for you.